And right now, I would like to announce Dr. Phil Bluestein.
Good evening. My name is Phil Bluestein, and I warmly welcome you to tonight's program that I'm sure is going to be absolutely wonderful. This presentation is being offered through a local Calgary group called Wellness Through Mindfulness. We created this group in 2015 as a means of freely offering information on mindfulness and related topics. And we used to meet in person twice a month. And now we have this luxury of being able to work with the Calgary Public Library and present Zoom meetings twice a month. We have a website called www.thebreathproject.org that has animated video and talks from quite well-known mindfulness speakers on it. And this is also linked to the wtm.thebreathproject.org. That is our other website for WTM. And we have summaries of the previous talks, the Zoom recordings, and we are now starting a guided meditation section. I'd like to thank the Calgary Public Library for their opportunity in working with them. In particular, Patrick Mealy, who initially invited us to do this, and Maya Milovec for her great technological support. So we offer these Zoom meetings the first and third Thursday of the month. They run from 7 to 8:30 p.m. and one registers through the Calgary Public Library website. Just to let you know, on upcoming February the 4th, Dr. Leslie Ellistad will present on deepening your mindfulness meditation practice, opening, befriending, and letting go. On February the 18th, which is the third Thursday of February, I'm going to present a talk on meditation. What is it really, and how do you do it? And it's important for us to offer you this great opportunity to join us. We are going to offer a one-day retreat on Saturday, January the 30th, from 8:45 to 4 o'clock, finding peace in our mind. And one can register through the WTM website. So wonderful opportunity to deepen your practice, put your toe in the water, and really allow yourself to practice mindfulness all day. So let me reassure you that we do not sit for 10 hours straight, but there are lots of opportunities to get up, guided meditations on breath, body scan, compassion, mindfulness, and meditation. A wonderful opportunity to start to deepen your practice. So tonight, Christine Francoeur is going to present the part 2 of her series on mindfulness. A month ago, she gave a wonderful talk on mindfulness as it related to breath and body. And tonight, we are going to have a wonderful opportunity to practice mindfulness as it relates to our emotions. I think it's going to be a wonderful talk. Let me just tell you a bit about Christine before we start. And Christine has shared this with us to present to you. So Christine's path to mindfulness grew from a career in marketing and business development. She was working with many of Canada's top 100 businesses, and this led to many days on airplanes, boardrooms, until she was diagnosed with breast cancer at age 33. From that point on, the seeds of her mindfulness practice took root, and she pursued teacher training in yoga and mindfulness. Started locally, and then she took a certification program with Jack Cornfield and Tara Rack. And these are really two of the top-notch mindfulness teachers in the world. She loves bringing the practice to people who are just beginning to meditate and knowing how much mindfulness has helped her. She loves supporting beginners to help their practice. So the evening is structured with a roughly 50-minute talk by Christine. From 8 to 8:30, we will have the opportunity to ask all the questions you want from Christine. Do not be shy. The question that you have, the person sitting next to you in Zoom will be thinking exactly the same question. And every question is an opportunity for us to explore this topic deeper. So please, don't be inhibited. Type your questions into chat, and you can type any question at any time throughout the evening. Just again to remind you that this evening is recorded. We will remain anonymity as it relates to the names of people who asked their questions in the chat. And with that, I now like to turn this evening over to Christine, and I'm sure we're going to have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. Oh, it's good. I'm glad we're back together. And for some of you who attended back in December, it's great to have you back. And for those who are new and just discovering some of our talks here at the library, welcome. Glad to have you here tonight. So as Phil mentioned, tonight really for me was an opportunity to continue to deepen the principles and the foundations around mindfulness. So initially when I presented back in December, we actually talked about the sustained present moment awareness that comes with mindfulness, how we can bring that to ourselves without judgment. And I offered you some techniques on how to help you do that. And we explored through our senses, our breath, our body. And if this is something maybe that you missed or is of interest to you, you can always pop onto our website. As Phil mentioned, those talks are there and you can always review if you want an experience to help you deepen that first foundation of the practice. But for tonight, when I originally started planning and preparing for this talk, I actually thought it was going to be an intro to mindfulness that included thinking and emotions. And then I quickly realized that I could probably do one whole session just on thinking and another whole session on emotions. So I split it up and just narrowed it down tonight to be the next foundation of mindfulness, which is emotions. So when we think about the practice of mindfulness, it truly is more than just sitting in a formal practice. And for me, that is where the richness of the practice really grew for me. It's about taking those skills like steadiness and awareness into our day-to-day lives. And like all good things, I have to tell you, the more you practice, the better it gets, and the more benefits you're going to notice. Like perhaps you'll notice you're more patient, maybe you're kinder, maybe you're less frustrated, maybe anger that was popping up has just simmered, that there's this natural awareness that comes up, that we are much more aware of the hook of emotions, that we can have this reactivity in our lives that we weren't aware of before. And with the power of mindfulness and that connection to the practice, we have that quieter mind and that steady heart. And really within that comes like a greater acceptance. And it's just such a gift. And I know that if I was to sit with each of you and you had to share with me why you'd like to learn more about mindfulness, you'd each have your own reasons. But my guess is that there would probably be some overlaps. And understanding how the practice can help you in the steadiness through emotions and feelings is a common one. And tonight I'll be taking you through two practices that have been really great for me and supporting me and my students and the wisdom that's been passed down from previous teachers. And you're going to learn how to build your awareness, how to recognize challenging emotions when they come up, how to be present for them, and then how to work through those emotions with compassion. And as my teacher, Jack Kornfield, loves to say and remind us, we need to embrace all that is the story of our lives. Praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, joy and sorrow, birth and death. And all of this is the heart of the practice, the call to have open-hearted awareness to be present for our lives. And so you will teach yourself to call on the best of your wise heart and connect to that deep well of wisdom within you. So sounds good to me, sounds good to you. Okay, so where do we start? How do we tend to our inner experience? And it's not only important to pay attention to the present moment, but also how you pay attention. How do we get intimate with the things that are naturally hardwired to push away? Like when things get challenging, that's our response. It's an automatic response for us to turn away. And well, when we do start finding that compassionate response, but it can be difficult when we know that pain is there. If we turn away from it, we can't awaken compassion within us. We have to find a turning towards the pain and the challenges and the sorrows. For if we keep them at a distance, then we can't awaken passion in ourselves to help us move through the challenges of emotions. And so the first practice that I'd like to take you through tonight is to help you awaken your heart. And a great practice to do that is called loving kindness. And for some of you, you may be familiar with this already, but it's also known as metta, which is the Pali word for goodwill, for friendliness. And it's cultivating loving kindness for ourselves is that really, for me, it was just like a foundation for building compassion. Because when we can offer that loving kindness to our friends, our family, for new people we meet, to our greater humanity, and even for life itself, we're able to start to open our hearts and be able to turn that and offer that to ourselves. And I know that when I say love, I realize that word can stir a lot of responses in us. But really, when we think about loving kindness, you can almost think of it as like a warm tone of friendliness that you can have for yourself and others. So in the formal practice, you would start by thinking of a particular person, you visualize them, and then you silently repeat a series of phrases designed to create feelings of goodwill for that person. So examples of the phrases would be, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. And there can be some variation, but that would be more of the traditional phrases, which are very powerful. They're very simple, very straightforward, easy to remember. And those phrases are thought of as really like friendly wishes, like good intentions. And in a full practice, you would send those good wishes to yourself, to maybe a benefactor or a mentor, and you would send them to someone neutral. So maybe somebody you met on a street that you don't really have like a relationship with, but you've like crossed paths and you just want to send them some good wishes. And then you would send the loving kindness wishes to someone that you're having difficulty with. And then finally to all beings. It's just a really lovely practice. And what's great about this practice is actually been studied, and there are studies that have proven and shown us that a regular practice of loving kindness helps us become happier over time. And the more you do it, the more powerful the effects of the practice. There's a reduction in negative emotions, a reduction in anxiety, depression, and an increase in those positive emotions like happiness and joy and a sense of peace. You know, but that's not to say that with every practice it can be challenging. And for some people, the challenges of a loving kindness practice can seem sort of rote and repetitive, and you know, there's like a sense of awkwardness around it. And I know for me, when I first started the practice, because with the words may I felt like I was looking and asking for something, like that I was looking for something, for some greater thing to provide for me. May this come to me. But it's really the intention and of these good wishes that's here to create a resonance as we practice. And there's a story from the Judaic tradition that reminds us that why over time the practice will work. So a disciple asked the rabbi, why does the Torah tell us to place these words upon our hearts? Why does it not tell us to place the holy words in our hearts? And the rabbi answers, because typically our hearts are closed and we cannot place the holy words in our hearts. So we place them on top of our hearts. And there they stay until one day the heart breaks open and the words fall in. Just love that. And I've taught this practice many times and I've gotten such great feedback from my students. So I'm excited to bring it to you tonight. Let's just take a moment and find a comfortable position. So sitting up tall, just adjusting yourself and your support to ensure that the spine is long, that you can take some nice full breaths. So when the body's maybe rounded or there's like a little bit of a slumping, it's a little bit more difficult to breathe. And we really want the energy to flow up and down easily up the spine with the ease of breath. So feel yourself lifted and long. You can close your eyes if that's comfortable for you. And start by bringing your attention to any sensations that are just arising in your body. And maybe noticing where you feel warmth or sense of coolness. Or there might be a sense of tingling or a sensation in the body. And then coming in to be conscious of your breath. Perhaps lengthening the breath. Not straining or striving or reaching for the breath, but just like a gentle opening to let the lungs expand, to take in the breath. Not softening, to release. It's really letting your attention stay with that rise and fall of the breath. And even for a few moments, if it's comfortable for you, if you'd like to put a hand to your heart or another location that feels comforting to you, just let it be a reminder to bring not only awareness, but compassion to your experience and yourself. And now bring to mind a person or a living being who naturally makes you smile. Someone with who you have an easy, uncomplicated relationship. This could be a child, a friend. It just naturally brings happiness to your heart. And you could have multiple people, but for this practice, just choose one. And letting yourself feel what it's like to be in that person's presence. Allowing yourself to enjoy their good company. Just seeing a vivid image of this person in your mind's eye. Now recognize how this person wishes to be happy and free from difficulties and suffering. How this person wishes to be loved, just like you, and every other living being. And we bring the phrases of loving kindness to this person, feeling the importance of your words. Just repeating them to yourself after me. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And repeating those wishes again for this important person. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Just continuing to silently repeat those phrases, continuing to offer those good wishes to this person in your mind's eye. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And now adding yourself to your circle of goodwill, creating an image of yourself in the presence of your loved one, visualizing both of you together. And bringing those same wishes to the both of you. May you and I be happy. May you and I be peaceful. May you and I be healthy. May you and I live with ease. May you and I be happy. May you and I be peaceful. May you and I be healthy. May you and I live with ease. Now letting go of the image of the other person, perhaps thanking your loved one before moving on, and letting the attention of your full focus come to rest directly on yourself. You can put your hand over your heart if that feels right for you, feeling the warmth and gentle pressure of your hand. And visualize your whole body in your mind's eye, perhaps noticing any stress or emotions that may be lingering within you, and offering yourself the phrases. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. May I be happy. May I be peaceful. May I live with ease. And continuing to focus on the phrases and offering that loving kindness to yourself. Now taking a few breaths, just resting quietly in your own body and letting go of the phrases and just accepting whatever your experience is exactly as it is. Just beginning to open your eyes. Taking in the room around you. And you might just want to move the body, even inhaling those arms up, reaching up and lowering them down. Might even feel good just to twist gently side to side. Taking some deep breaths. Sorry about my bell, it seemed a little loud. So hopefully that didn't startle you. But what did you notice during the meditation for yourself? What came up for you? Is it easier to feel loving kindness for your loved one than yourself? Or were you able to bring that to yourself tonight? And you know, it's so common for people to find that it's a lot easier to feel loving kindness, to give it away than it is to bring it to ourselves. And in this version, you know, we started offering the loving kindness to our loved one, and then we tucked ourselves in with that loved one to keep the flow of that loving kindness sharing between your loved one and yourself. So hopefully that was a good entry point for you to come in and offer those phrases to yourself. As far as the phrases go, they are the traditional practice and really can create great feelings within the heart, but there is an opportunity and there's a bit of a process that you can do to help to develop your own phrases. So I don't really have time to cover that with you tonight, but if that's something that interests you, I'll share my email on the chat later and you can feel free to reach out to me and I can share some information with you on how you can do that, just to help the practice become authentic to you so it feels right for you. So, and again, just a reminder that as we move into the second half of the talk tonight, please don't hesitate to put any questions that you have in the chat box and we can address them as we wrap up tonight. So I'm just going to take a quick sip of water. So for the second half of our evening tonight, we're going to talk about meeting those difficult emotions and how we can help ourselves with by bringing ourselves compassion. So like we learned in the first session, we can use mindfulness to connect to the present moment through the body. And just as we have a river of sensations in the body and sense experiences that we can connect to, there's also a river of feelings and emotions. And we all sense our feelings in different ways. Some of you sense it with your mind and you connect it with thought. Some of you sense it in your heart. You can feel it maybe in your chest, maybe tears or different physical sensations that bring those emotions and feelings alive. And then there's those people that you can feel it in all of the ways. So we know that feelings and emotions are vast and wide. And there's actually, I've seen it before. It's like I got it during my meditation teacher training, but it was like a summary of the 500 feelings and emotions by letter. And so when you really start looking at that and thinking of the capacity that we have in our human experience to feel, it's really astonishing and really amazing. And when we look closer at our responses, we need to see and recognize what's here. So that's where the mindfulness comes in. But there's also the next layer underneath, which is the compassion to those feelings that arise. So it's one thing to name them, it's one thing to notice that they've arisen, but then how do we support ourselves as we work through our emotions? And Kristen Neff, a psychologist and scholar who's been focused on compassion and studying compassion for her entire career, gives like a great understanding on how compassion helps us heal in the body, because she reminds us that it's almost like a balm of healing that helps us work through those mental and emotional experiences that come up. So when we bring ourselves compassion, we're actually releasing oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. And this increases those feelings of trust, of calm, of the feelings of safety, and even like generosity. And all of those are just great feelings that really help us to calm the nervous system when it's kicked up into that fight or flight or even freeze, depending on the nature of the event that's triggered the emotions. So for me, it was interesting. I don't know if I mentioned this in my first talk, but when I first started to practice and meditate, I used to believe that meditation was all about transcendence. I thought for me that it was going to be about leaving it all behind, that I was going to leave the thoughts, that I was going to leave the emotions and all the pain, and that there would be this sense of just releasing and letting it all go. And when that didn't happen, I thought, well, geez, I'm failing at this terribly, kicking the judgment, kicking the shame, kicking the I'm not very good at this, because I didn't understand what a practice of mindfulness actually was, which was an awareness that it wasn't an awareness and acceptance that it wasn't actually about leaving. It wasn't about turning away from it all, which is what I originally thought that it was. And when we think about acceptance and the practice, I love these words by Maya Angelou, where she reminds us that the ache for home lives in all of us, the safe place where we can go as we are and not be questioned. The safe place of home. And we are all here living this life with all the joys, all the sorrows, the wins, the losses. And every one of us on this call has had past experiences of stress, of trauma, of heartbreak, anxiety, grief, fears. All of us share that. We all have our life stories. And an accumulation of those over time, we know can like layer on, and we start to protect ourselves more and more. And those protective layers add a barrier to that safe place of home in all of us. And through the power of mindfulness, where we know that we are knowing, this starts to open us up, that we can investigate to what's here now. And it allows us to be grounded in that observing part of the mind and not hooked in, not completely at the mercy of our emotions, where we respond in anger or we say things we regret, that we're able to feel the reaction in our body, that there's this connection and this immediacy to see like, oh, it's here. And we can take that pause, and it's just that bit of space and the mindfulness of that space to give us just this beat, the pause to say, how am I going to respond? How will I react? How can I move forward from a place of wisdom, a place of trueness that comes from the heart? And again, I like to think how this falls in the category of sounds simple, but is definitely not easy. This takes effort, and it takes practice and patience. And there are days where I forget, where I'm tired, or I didn't do my practice that morning, or I'm just having the experience that everybody else has. And I look back and I'm like, we have the regret. But that's still its own form of waking up, right? And it's the acceptance to know that I can start again, that the practice renews, that we can always come back to start again, right? And so when I think about emotions and really starting to check in and acknowledge our emotions, there's like a liberation in that. There's like a freedom that we can start to support ourselves, knowing that there's a way through it. And that even though there's discomfort in the emotions and that it's challenging, that we're going to name it and we're not going to turn away from it. But does that mean that I need to feel all of the stress or all of the emotions in its full intensity? Definitely not. Like, definitely not. Experiencing the discomfort and acknowledging that pain and being able to take it to whatever degree that we can. It's like, that dip of the toe into the emotional pool to see, so we don't overwhelm ourselves, is how we need to move through it. It's like we control how much we can take. And when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, like Phil mentioned at the introduction at the beginning, really it was the years following my diagnosis and my surgery and the treatments that were really like the hardest and the most challenging times, because I felt like I was constantly living in continuous fear that it was gonna come back. What was that twinge? What's that pain? Like, I was second guessing everything. We want to talk about mindfulness of the body. And at the time, I was just starting to build my mindfulness practice. And so the more I meditated, the more I realized how I was just living in fear, like, and it was constant fear. And so even though I could name it and be aware of it, I wasn't bringing myself the compassion and acceptance that I needed to move through it. So there was this struggle. Like, I had this struggle with the fear that was continuous because I couldn't find that self, that balm to give myself to acknowledge my fear and to bring that compassion. So I want to just read something to you. It's from this book by Glennon Doyle, and I read it this summer. And I don't know if any of you know of her or even have read the book. So the book is called Untamed, and it's from the chapter Deliveries. So Glennon is an activist and an author, and she fully acknowledges that she's a complete introvert, even though she is a writer and a motivational speaker. But she shares this really great section in the book about emotions. And she starts here, I'll start to read it to you. A person is ringing my doorbell. I run out of my office to find my children, also stunned and waiting for direction about how to respond to this imminent home invasion. We stare at each other, count bodies, and collectively cycle through the 5 stages of doorbell grief. Number 1, denial. This cannot be happening. All of the people allowed to be in this house are already in this house. Maybe it's the TV. Is the TV on? Number 2, anger. Who does this? What kind of boundaryless aggressor rings someone's doorbell in broad daylight? 3, bargaining. Don't move, don't breathe. Maybe they'll go away. 4, depression. Why? Why us? Why is life so hard? 5, acceptance. Damn it to hell. You, the little one, put on some pants, act normal, and go answer the door. So the door always gets answered. Is this because adulting requires door answering? Of course not. I answer the door because of the sliver of hope in my heart that if I open the door, there might be a package waiting for me. A package. When I got sober, I learned that hard feelings are doorbells that interrupt me, send me into a panic, and then leave me with an exciting package. Sobriety is a decision to stop numbing and blaming away hard feelings and start answering the door. I began allowing feelings to disturb me. This was scary because I had always assumed that my feelings were so big and powerful that they would stay with me forever and eventually kill me. But my hard feelings did not stay forever and did not kill me. Instead, they came and went, and afterward, I was left with something I didn't have before. And that something was self-knowledge. Hard feelings rang my bell and left me with a package filled with brand spanking new information about myself. This new information was always exactly what I needed to know about myself to take the next step in my life with confidence and creativity. It turned out, though, what I needed most was inside the one place I'd been running from my entire life: pain. Everything I needed to know next was inside the discomfort of now. As I practiced allowing my hard feelings to come and stay as long as they needed to, I got to know myself. The reward for enduring hard feelings was finding my potential, my purpose, my people. I'm so grateful. I can't imagine a greater tragedy than remaining forever unknown to myself. That would be the ultimate self-abandonment. So I have become unafraid of my own feelings. Now, when hard feelings ring the bell, I pull up my big girl pants and answer the door. I just love that. I love that. And Glennon is so right. Like, what a gift it is to really know ourselves, to have the courage to look and see our pain and know that it won't last and that it will change and that it will flow through. And she's right, those emotions, they do leave us a package. Our body sends messages through emotions and feelings all day. And we have responses continually to the events that are happening around us. However, if we are able to interrupt that response and bring it into our consciousness, that's where we can recognize what's happening and make a wise response. And it takes courage and a gentle approach to not turn away from the emotions that arrive as those key messengers, the doorbell, the ringing doorbell. And the first thing that we can do is we can ask ourselves, can I be with this? And that question, if we ask it regularly, begins to develop the habit of staying and being here when we were previously leaving. And we can leave in a number of ways. We distract ourselves with so many different ways. And, you know, there's a lot of suffering that comes from resistance. And Tara Brach loves to talk about this, that our pain times resistance really equals more suffering. And it's so true. And so what if the answer is no? And we say to ourselves, can I be with this? And if the answer is no, then we honor that for ourselves. And it's okay now, or it's okay that it's no right now. And you know what, you can feel good because you started to become aware, and there's compassion by saying no. And you didn't turn away. You asked yourself, you checked in, and it's like, no, not right now. And so we start to open ourselves to what's here. And this is a time that we bring the tenderness and we bring the capacity for self-compassion. We begin to understand that that's what holds the emotions, that the mindfulness, the awareness of the emotions that are here now, and the compassion to wrap it up. And so there is a really beautiful practice that I'm going to take you through here in just a moment. And it's 3 things for you to remember. It's soften, soothe, and allow. Soften, soothe, and allow. So emotions are going to pass through us much more easily when we establish that loving acceptance with them. And when our awareness has that fearful quality, like I was talking about earlier with me, we're less likely to be open to our emotions, and it'll be much more difficult for us. So when we think about softening, that's where we bring ourselves the physical compassion. When we think about soothing, that's where the emotional compassion comes in. And then when we get to allowing, that's the mental compassion that we bring. So I'm going to take you through a practice right now so that you know how to bring this for yourself in the future when things are challenging or difficult. Just arriving once again. Feel the body sitting and know you're sitting. notice the body breathing and know you're breathing. Perhaps placing your hand on your heart just for a few moments to remind yourself that you are here now in this moment and that you are worthy of this kindness and this compassion. Now just take a moment to recall a mild or moderately difficult situation, perhaps that you're in right now. Maybe it's a challenge in a relationship, or maybe some stress in the workplace. Perhaps there's a loved one that's dealing with some pain. Try not to choose a really difficult situation or something that's too trivial. Just something somewhere in the middle of that range. Just choosing something that creates some obvious emotions within you as you recall. Just clearly visualize the situation, what's happening. And as you recall the situation, the emotions arise within yourself, just label those emotions. It could be anger, or sadness, grief, frustration, longing, fear. Just noticing what comes up. If you're having many emotions, let's try to name one that seems to be creating the strongest response in you. And then repeat the emotion to yourself in a gentle, understanding voice, as if you were almost validating that for a friend. Just acknowledge it by saying, that's fear, that's longing, whatever the emotion is for you. Now expand your awareness to your body as a whole, feeling the resonance of that emotion in the body. Just feeling whatever is feelable to you in this moment. Just seeing if you can notice one location in your body where you feel it most strongly. Could be a point of muscle tension, or maybe it's a hollow feeling. Maybe it's constricting. And in your mind, just bringing your attention to that area in the body. And allowing your awareness to fully inhabit the sensations of that emotion in the body. Now, can you soften that location in the body where you feel it most? Letting the muscles soften. And remember that we're not trying to change the feeling. We're just holding it in a tender way. Softening around the edges. Now we can begin to soothe ourselves because of this difficult situation. Might mean that you place that hand to the body again, to the heart, or where you feel the sensation the most. Are there some comforting words that you would like to bring to yourself? Something you'd like to hear? You can offer yourselves the words of, I'm sorry, this is so difficult. Or I care. Be a sense of, I'm here for you now. Or an intention of loving kindness. May I be kind to myself. Just allowing the comfort to be here. Just making room for it. Releasing the need to try and make it go away. And just allow yourself to just be here as you are, even for the briefest moment. Now letting go. And focus on your whole body. Becoming aware again of the body, breathing itself. Coming back to know the body is sitting. Gently opening your eyes. And so that's the soften, soothe, and allow practice. Just checking in with yourself right now and just noticing how that was for you and maybe what you observed. Maybe being aware of where it was challenging for you. And that's okay. There's an acceptance to that. It's okay when we're just exploring a new practice that we can just let it be as it is. Giving yourself the gift of that. And so when you choose to do this practice for yourself, when you're guiding yourself through this, there's like a challenging situation, just remember the situation, or in the moment, maybe while it's happening. I mean, you can move through this quite quickly if you needed to, and you'll just name the largest emotion that's present, and then checking in with the body. Where do I feel it? Where are the sensations of that emotion? And then softening around the physical sensations of that. Like for me, when it's fear, it's just like right in my abdomen. It just feels that tightening, and I almost can feel like a little bit nauseous. And then I just have to consciously think, okay, soften the belly, soften the belly. And I think about, for me, sending the breath there to find some space and a sense of ease around my stomach. And then we bring the soothing aspect. So finding those words, that mantra, or something that maybe is going to give you some reassurance. For me, it's like, it's going to be okay. It's okay. And I just remind myself of that. It's okay right now. I'm okay. And then we move into the last step, which is to allow the discomfort of the emotion to be here. It's that time of acceptance, just allowing yourself to be just as you are. And most of us try to be kind and considerate to our friends and our loved ones, and yet we can forget to give ourselves those very same gifts. And self-compassion is more than ending just self-criticism, releasing that judgment. It's actively opening our hearts to ourselves, responding to ourselves as we would a friend. And we allow ourselves to be present for our pain, and we're stopping to say, you know, this is difficult. And how can I care for myself in this moment? And yes, you know, when we think about compassion, it can be comforting and soothing and validating and all so important. But yet there also can be another response to compassion that can be about choice and protection and motivating ourselves. So I like when Kristen Neff taught this, it was so powerful to me because she likens it to the yin and yang, where the yin aspect of the compassion would be that soothing part. It's like a mother rocking her child. It's just that comfort, that, you know, validation. And yet the yang side of compassion is to know that sometimes that's maybe not the response that we need, that maybe we need boundaries, that would be a compassionate act, or maybe we need to take action or connect to our inner strength. So remembering that there's two sides to compassion, and that when we start to listen in, that we know that there's probably a wise response in us that's waiting to be heard. So whether it's the yin or the yang, right? But the only way to know that is that we really need to look in. So I just want to close tonight briefly with a poem. Did I lose my page? Oh, here we go. It's called Go In and In by Donna Falls. Go in and in, be the space between two cells, the vast resounding silence in which spirit dwells. Be sugar dissolving on the tongue of life. Dive in and in as deep as you can dive. Be infinite, ecstatic truth. Be love conceived and born in union. Be exactly what you seek. The beloved singing yes, tasting yes, embracing yes, until there is only essence, the all of everything expressing through you as you. Go in and turn away from nothing that you find. And I hope tonight, through these two practices, the first being the practice of loving kindness, and the second, the soften, soothe, allow meditation, brings you to new ways of self-acceptance. And I hope it helps you steady your heart through the gift of compassion, because truly it's my greatest wish that we can all be here fully awake for our lives. Thank you.
That was wonderful, Christine. Thank you so much. What certainly a heart-feeling practices. So we have some questions, and again, I invite all the people on Zoom. This is a wonderful opportunity to ask Christine all those questions you have about mindfulness, whether it's about emotions, whether it's about the first session with the body and the breath. Everything is welcome. So, first question was, it was hard to visualize myself. And so this gets back to that whole question of self-compassion versus compassion for other. Why do you think it's so difficult for us to have, why is it so hard to offer ourselves compassion? And second, you know, you talk about being able to come to this from the observing part of our mind. And when my mind says, I'm bad, I'm angry, I'm scared, I totally identify with it. So how do we not identify with our sense of self that says, I'm scared?
So just think about that first question where, Phil, like you were saying, the difficulty for this person to connect with their sense of self, like when they were bringing loving kindness to self. And I think, you know, this is such a common challenge for all of us. And it can be so easy to look outside of ourselves when we've been caught up in the thoughts of our mind, and there can be that disconnect from ourselves, even, you know, from the sense of our body, our sense of our presence. Like when we did our practice of mindfulness last time, it can be even difficult to feel sensation in the body. You know, we can be so caught up in believing that our whole sense of self resides here in this construct of the mind and the stories and what we're creating in our mind. And so there can be that disconnect from ourselves. And through the practice and through mindfulness and gradually coming back to the body, and even something as simple as, we've talked about this before, but just feeling into the body, the feet on the ground, knowing that the body is sitting, just feeling a sense of the greater self, to connect to the whole self and not just the constructs of the mind, starts to open us up. And starting to feel that river of senses, the river of sensations that move through us. And then we start to build that greater connection to ourselves, and starting to notice that when we're in situations and emotions bubble up, that there is a response immediately in the body, and that we can start to become more connected to ourselves and not just the stories of the mind. Like, what would you suggest, Phil?
Oh, I totally agree with you. I just say that I think the biggest problem we have in mindfulness is our attachment to who we believe we are.
Yes,
Who we
exactly.
believe we are. Is self real? Do you think it's real? I mean, is this our problem, that we believe in something that really isn't there?
Exactly.
It was way easier for my loved one because she's usually way happier than I am.
And you know, look at there, that's already the mindfulness bell rang. You know, that's because it's like when we start to do these practices, the judgments come up because we're bringing awareness to the practice and we're focusing on sending these phrases. And then it's like the mind gets more involved. And because we're becoming more mindful, we start to become aware of the thoughts, and it can start to feel like they're amping up, that there's more of them, when that might not actually even be the case. So it's just interesting to see how those judgments come back on ourselves, how we start to compare ourselves, that comparing mind or that inner critic, it starts to really get loud because we're bringing mindfulness and we're starting to become aware. And the greatest gift of this is the more we do it, the more we do it, the more we can bring compassion to ourselves, and we can bring compassion to our judging mind, our judging self, and finding space with that. But it's truly a practice of time and patience.
And can you comment on your meta practice now that you've mentioned practice? What would you advise people in terms of doing a formal practice? How often? How long?
You know, when it comes to loving kindness, like you experienced tonight's practice where I turned it out to offer to someone that we love, and then like I said, to tuck ourselves in, and then maybe offer to both of us. And you can keep it simple, you know, that this is a practice and it can be gradual. So if this is new to you and you haven't done this practice, then I would suggest just start there. And then maybe you could lengthen the practice, bringing in yourself as well. And then over time, as you start to build your capacity for the practice, you can start to bring in more. Like I mentioned, you can bring in a mentor, you can bring in somebody neutral that you would just like to share those wishes of loving kindness. And then that's where we really start to grow our practice by bringing loving kindness to someone where we have a difficult relationship. So that's where things get interesting and challenging in the practice, but it can be good to build up that that sustainment of the practice, so that when we start to do that with someone who's more challenging, you're going to have those feelings of resonance already there, and that there's like a steadiness. And so then when we come to that person, it's like, okay, here we go. It can come to that grounded place. So, but it takes time. So, I mean, you could start this practice for, 2 minutes, then you could build to 5 minutes and build to 10 minutes. And I mean, the loving kindness is like steeped in study, and we know that this brings like healing to people, that it helps people become more happy and joyful, and it reduces anxiety. It's such a powerful practice when it's done regularly. It's beautiful practice.
Do you think you might offer a summary of all the phrases that we can post?
Oh, I would love to.
So just to let everybody know, Christine will offer a summary of the practice, and we'll post it on the site. What if you can't think of someone who makes you feel happy?
You know what? It can be just an uncomplicated relationship. So maybe it's someone more neutral, like maybe it's like a pet, or maybe it's somebody that who was important to you in your childhood, or it's the memory of somebody, or there's ways to bring that resonance of the practice that that you could find, hopefully that you could find someone that you would want to offer those wishes, because really it's about stirring that loving kindness in ourselves, like the rabbi said, to start to place the words on our heart, that eventually the heart can open and the words fall in. Just love that. Yeah.
Okay. Someone commented that they thank you for the reading excerpt. It was so powerful.
Oh yes, I'm glad. It was for me too. Loved it.
Are you sure my pain will eventually pass? The doctor said he didn't know if it ever would. I have a rare illness that is extremely painful every day. Every day I shower, it is even more painful. I am 1 in 2 million. The doctor said that taking the COVID vaccine will make me even more sick. I might have to social distance for the rest of my life. So I guess the question is that we are so ingrained with our emotions. They seem so fixed and permanent. So how do we develop the faith and trust in this practice that we will see change? And how quick can we expect to see a change?
Well, it's like you said, and that's wise words, Phil, that we know that nothing in this life is permanent. Like that is the certainty of this life. And that as we talk about emotional pain, and I say this, that there's a place for these practices, but there's also a place for greater support, to see like a psychologist or therapist or someone that can provide more support than, maybe just these practices. And it's knowing to trust your inner wisdom about when we need more support than just the practices. But this, when I think about the practice and what we can expect, our life continues with the 10,000 sorrows and 10,000 joys. And while there is pain and there is suffering, it's my greatest wish is that we can be present for the joys as well, right? That we can start to open our hearts to true presence. And I wish I could say, I wish I could say that there's like a fixed amount of time, but it's a commitment to the practice, and it's a commitment to honor the practice and bring it into our day-to-day life. Like, we don't practice mindfulness and meditation to get good at sitting on our cushion. Like, we practice this to get good at our lives. Like Sharon Salzberg talks about that. And that to me feels like the truth of this practice, that it's ongoing. And it changes as we change and as our lives change, but the gift is to be present for it.
And this is an interesting point, because this individual is talking about pain and you're talking about emotions.
Yeah.
And what is it that we learn by turning towards and feeling and staying with our emotions? What is there that we learn about them by staying with them and just being open to what they have to tell us?
Well, and it's like you said, the beauty of that is to know that as we stay with our emotions, that we can move through them, right? That truly is the gift of the journey of the ebb and flow of the emotion, to know that like we can move through it. That the more that I've practiced this, and as the challenges have, like the grief that is continued, to present in my life, like this practice has really shown me how to turn in and not turn away. Because what I was talking about, when I'm resisting, it feels like my suffering is greater and longer, versus when I'm able to truly turn into my emotions and feel the acceptance of them and know that they're here and feel them to whatever degree that I can, I feel that there's a natural softening to them, that their intensity turns down and I can feel myself move through. But I think that's what I would recommend, that truly is just that remembering, the remembering.
That's great. What books do you suggest for beginners on mindfulness?
Oh, I stacked a couple. I had a feeling someone was going to ask. So this is one of my favorite. I don't know if anyone can see this.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, so it's Good Morning, I Love You, Shauna Shapiro. She's a PhD and she's been studying mindfulness for probably over 20 years. And this is a really practical book. Like, she's got some really great practices in here, and the way she introduces the foundations of mindfulness, this is excellent. And then from a self-compassion perspective, I can't say enough about Kristen Neff and her work. Awesome book. This is a fantastic book. And there's also a workbook that she's created as well. So if you really want to start going deeper into building a compassion practice, fantastic. And if you go to Kristen Neff's website, there are so many studies that she's been a part of that really demonstrate the benefits of compassion, and just tools and lots of richness here. So this is another good one. And then I have to say, this was one of my original favorites too. So True Refuge by Tara Brach.
And Christine, you can at the bottom of the phrases, we'll add the names of those. Okay, yes. So people can have access, and that'll be on the WTM website in a week.
Great.
I struggle with being okay with doing nothing and allowing space to be, instead of doing things and filling my time constantly. Do you have any recommendations on how to learn to embrace doing nothing? And I think this is sort of,
I love that question.
But maybe, in essence, I mean, the question is being asked is, how do you do mindfulness? because you're talking about embracing sounds, feelings, emotions, and the next will be thoughts.
Yes.
In essence. So the question is really asking, how do you do mindfulness? How do you embrace everything and not run away from it? Because I know about you, when I get upset and scared and worried, it's the last thing I want to embrace. So maybe again, maybe you could address this question and how do we get over the fear of approaching our emotions when it's the last thing we want to do?
How do we get over it?
Or work through it or adapt to it or cope, whatever term, but how do we get to the point of moving from the fear to the engagement or embracing?
I would say that truly the greatest way to build the practice, and when you think of how mindfulness and compassion go hand in hand, I think being able to sit and practice for 5 minutes every day, to sit, to practice, to follow your breath, to listen to sound, to just feel sensation in the body, is really the entry point to awareness. And when we start to build that skill, when you start to understand how to build mindfulness, like through the power of awareness, and then you start to just naturally take it with you off the cushion. Like when you're not sitting in those 5 minutes, all of a sudden you're in a challenging discussion, or you're having a response to something, or there's fear, or there's worry. And all of a sudden you're going to notice, oh, hey, this is what I'm feeling. And it's retraining the mind to that level of awareness that you know where to look. And then suddenly it's like those moments of doing nothing turn into something. And then there's another moment in there where you can also do nothing, in that, what I love to call that sacred pause, where we feel hooked. It's happened, I'm hooked, there's been a reaction, and I could get angry or I could say something, and yet I'm going to pause, and how do I respond? And so to me, when we're just starting to accept doing nothing, it may seem like nothing, but it is something. Like you are rewiring your brain for awareness and for moving consciously through your life. Like you will have woken up, and what a gift to come from doing nothing.
Thank you. How do you show yourself compassion when you screwed up so bad that you hurt millions of people without knowing until it was too late? I still feel so horrible about what I did in December 2019. So how do we let go of our memories of, it's interesting, we live our lives either in the memory of what we did, or we are rehearsing catastrophes that haven't happened. How do you, again, this comes back to the whole question again of self-compassion, isn't it? Is really what this person is asking.
Well, and that can happen because, we're getting down into the muddy waters, it's like we're stirring the pot, and, maybe even like in the practice, like soften, soothe, allow, and we're starting to see where maybe shame comes up. And that's common. Like that's so common, because the things that we've turned away from for years and years suddenly are coming up. right? We're sitting and maybe memories come up because we're starting to clear the space. We're starting to get more clarity. And so truly, it's like to be able to feel and see, okay, well, here we are, the shame is here. And so where do I feel the shame in my body, and how can I bring myself a sense of softening? How can I just give myself just that bit of compassion, that bit of self-forgiveness to whatever degree we can, whatever capacity we have to bring that to ourselves, to allow ourselves to be with that, is where it will start. And that can only happen over time. Because to think, if there was something that we need to forgive ourselves for, it will be a gradual process. And it's not one of those things that we wish that we could just turn on and release, but there will be a deepening that takes place over time. And it can only happen over time with patience and with the practice, and just slowly teaching ourselves to bring ourselves compassion. Because as we've realized, compassion is probably one of the hardest things to bring to ourselves. Like, we know that it's not easy to give that to ourselves. We can give it away so easily to all the people we love, but truly to bring it to ourselves when we are such a culture of chin up, let's go. We've got that yang energy, that do. And so how do we bring that tender side? It takes practice. It takes a lot of practice. So go easy with yourself. Go easy.
Thank you. Someone mentioned a book. We'll add it in the list, called Mindfulness in Plain English.
Oh, that's excellent too.
Bhante Gunaratana.
Yes, I've got that one here too.
And someone said, could you put up the list of emotions? And we'll add that.
Mm-hmm.
The
Loving Kindness book by Sharon Salzberg too.
Great. Have a great list for us.
I'm a reader.
For physical pain, someone says, focus more on the parts of your body that doesn't hurt and visualize the parts that hurts as sensations, making sure that more of you focus as much as you're able to is on the parts of your body that work, eyes, breath, smell, and practicing gratitude for the parts of your body that work. So it sounds like, can we, in some way, we feel our pain in our body, and then can we balance it with coming to parts of the body that aren't feeling that? So again, Peter Levine talks about what's called penduluming, pain, not pain. Can you comment on how you can use parts of your body that aren't in pain to support resting in the pain?
One great practice that I love to do is to use the senses. So if you were to close your eyes, and even just right now, if you just close your eyes and come to the sense of hearing. So aware of the energy of your ears. And then just feel into the peaceful ease of the sounds, peaceful ease of hearing. It's like a beautiful practice because we can move from the peaceful ease of hearing to the peaceful ease of touch, to the peaceful ease of sight, to taste, to all of the senses. And if you can bring that sense of peace and feel the resonance of the senses, it can be a beautiful place to relax in. So maybe try that and see if that might work. That might be a nice practice.
Great. We have two last questions, and then that will be it. I attended the session in December. Phil mentioned the phrase witnessing awareness. There was a light bulb moment for me. Like Christine mentioned tonight, mindfulness isn't about transcendence and ignoring emotions, but sitting with them. Not to say you're totally unaffected by them, but you're able to recognize your emotions, take a step back, and not be overwhelmed by them. I didn't understand the distinction until then. Thank you. So it's a really great question, because mindfulness is, as you've mentioned, the capacity to rest in the observing mind that is able to witness what is going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the problem is that our witnessing mind gets co-opted by our sense of self, and we lose that capacity to witness, or to be witnessing, not to witness. Can you mention, or just briefly talk, it's a big topic and a little bit of time, but can you just mention now, how do we practice the capacity to be witnessing of our experience rather than being the one who is having the experience?
So, Phil, I'm looking at the time, but it's the energy to know we are knowing, right? So when we begin to practice, and when we're able to connect, to know that feeling that we are knowing, to feel that, to know we are thinking, and to know the experience that we're having, it's like that's the connection where we can start to feel that connection to the person, or to the witness, right? So it's too bad. I'm sad that people weren't able, well, maybe hopefully they'll see your upcoming talk, Phil, because your last talk, you spoke a lot about self. So as we move forward, and I don't want to take up much more time, but as you move forward in your practice, it's that feeling of letting our thoughts run. But then when we know that we're having thoughts, and we bring that witness in, that we can interrupt the thoughts, that we can bring the mindfulness, right? So that's where the true bell rings, and we're able to awaken from the trance of where we believe we are just the running dialogue of our mind, and that we can actually interrupt. So that, to me, the day that I really understood that, like what this person is sharing is just transformative, like for your practice and how you move through life. Like it is such a gift to really recognize that.
Wonderful. Our last question of the evening. Sometimes we need to learn to accept changing from the doing mode to the being mode.
Mm-hmm.
What does doing, what does being mean? And is it, you often read about this, we should be being. Mindfulness is all about being, not doing. But so what is the distinction? And in reality, is there really a preference for one over the other?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. Part of me there feels like in mindfulness, in the beginning, there is a sense of doing. There can be a consciousness that we bring, like an intention, like a doing. And even when we think, like I mentioned earlier about compassion, the yin and yang of that, there is a conscious effort to make a decision on how we bring a sense of allowing. That's like a mental compassion. And there is a doing aspect to that, versus, I mean, this is a greater conversation when it comes to being. That we could spend a whole other day or a whole other evening on. But when we come into being, to be able to be with all that arises, so that as you start to sit more, and as you start to become present to the thoughts, to the emotions, you can start to see it arise in the witness, and see that it's there, and yet not be woven in so tightly to it, right? That we can see it arise in our consciousness, and we can also watch it like fall away, that we can watch it move through. And so there's the being aspect of that, but I also still love the doing aspect of our compassion and what we bring to ourselves. So there is, not to complicate things at this point of the evening, but it's all woven together. Though it's definitely woven together.
Right. Well, all I can say was wonderful being with what you were doing.
Thank you. You too.
Christine, we've come to the end of our evening. Would you like to make any closing statements, or to give some take-home messages for people to leave this evening with?
I think my greatest wish, like I said, I really hope that you will give yourself the time to practice the loving kindness phrases. And like I mentioned, I can share with you some ways to develop ones that might be more meaningful to you. But I really hope you'll try the loving kindness practice and see how it resonates for you and how the words land in your heart. And I also hope that some of you will see some value in the soften and the soothe and the allow. I just think that is such a powerful practice. If you can remember that, just those 3 words, that soften, soothe, allow. And it's just, I think it can be life-changing, truly.
Wow. Well, Christine, I want to thank you. This was a wonderful evening, and we've learned a lot, and 2 very effective practices that people can come home, and a wonderful discussion about multiple other topics. So I think on behalf of everyone who has joined us tonight, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation.
My pleasure.
The talk will be posted on the WTM website, and summaries as outlined. Christine will also provide that for you. Again, I'd like to thank the Calgary Public Library for this wonderful opportunity for Wellness Through Mindfulness to work with it. Please check our website for further events. And in particular, I like to just again mention our one-day retreat on January 30th. That will be a wonderful opportunity to deepen your practice and have the expertise of people who have already presented, Leslie Ellistad, Christine Francoeur, Alan Donsky, and myself. So with that, I'd like to thank you all. All have a good evening doing and being.